A 99-year-old World War II veteran just received his college degree, nearly 8 decades after leaving school to go to war. In 1942, Lou Pioli was attending Niagara University in upstate New York to become a dentist when he was drafted into the U.S. Army. He served in France, flying military gliders. Following the war, he worked in the insurance business, never realizing his dream to earn his college degree. Lou's daughter wrote to Niagara U and told them of her father's pride in his time at their school, saying her father exemplifies the mission of the school and its values. Earlier this week, at a special ceremony in Vermont, Mr. Pioli received an honorary degree hand-delivered to him by a university official. God bless him. Well, you know him best as one of the stars of the hit CBS drama Criminal Minds, but for over a decade, he's been one of the co-hosts of the National Memorial Day concert here in D.C. Tonight he talks about how he became involved in this great American tradition and the true meaning and significance of Memorial Day. Here's my exclusive interview with Joe Mantegna. Now, Joe, you've been hosting the National Memorial Day concert since 2005. How did you get involved, and why do you come back each year?
Well, I first got involved in 2002 when my dear friend Charles Durning, the actor and Silver Star recipient himself in World War II, asked me, we were both doing a TV series at the time, First Monday, about the Supreme Court. And he'd asked me, he said, would you be free during Memorial Day weekend? I do this concert in Washington, D.C., the National Memorial Day concert, and they have actors come in and read certain pieces relating to Memorial Day. And I thought, well, I love Charlie, and I said, well, of course, Charlie, I'm free that weekend. What will I be doing? Watching the Indianapolis 500 or barbecuing, as a lot of people do. Yeah. And I went with Charles to D.C., and I have to remember this is the Memorial Day right after 9/11. And my task at that concert was to stand up on stage, which I found out once, of course, I was immersed in it. Stand on stage in front of over 200,000 people live on stage and recount the words of 4 New York firemen who had lost their sons in 9/11. And they're sitting in the first row with their wives on their dress blue uniforms, these 4 retired New York firemen, their wives. And on each side of me are movie screens showing the planes flying into the World Trade Center. And behind me, the Washington Symphony Orchestra is playing Mozart's Requiem. Wow. So all I could say is, instantly, it kind of all hit me how this has transcended me, Joe Mantegna, the actor, doing a performance. This is me, Joe, recounting an historical event. And taking it all in and realizing, you know, the impact that the whole incident obviously was going to have, 9/11 and everything beyond. Right. It just kind of hit me, the importance of Memorial Day and the sacrifices that people had made for our country and we're going to have to continually make and we'll have to make in the future. And that's basically what did it. And so that's why it became, for me, the most important thing I do every year. Well,
when you started this National Memorial Day concert, when you started hosting it, did you have any idea it would become the national tradition that it has become? Because as you say, for many, many years, and indeed even this year for many Americans, it's a day to recreate, it's a day to barbecue. They don't focus on the intention of this day.
No. I mean, unless you have skin in the game, which in a way I didn't. I had a lot of military in my family, but they all came back. I mean, nobody was, you know, we never lost anyone. And so even Memorial Day didn't take on the same significance it did for military families who really can point to some loss. Right. But and so what I do now is when I talk about the concert, basically what I tell people, I say, go ahead and enjoy this holiday. Go ahead and have that barbecue. Watch the Indianapolis 500. Enjoy your 3-day weekend. But if you can, carve out 90 minutes of it on the weekend and watch the concert. And for nothing else, it will show you, it will give you a snapshot of why we have this holiday, and in my mind, why it's our most important holiday, because it's the holiday that allows us to have all the other holidays.
I agree with you. No, it's a commemoration of the departed servicemen and women, and Jerry Colbert did us all such an honor by highlighting this and making it something the whole nation can take part in via PBS. Now, Tell me, Joe, you were the spokesman for the campaign to build a national museum of the United States Army, which is being built now. It's set to open in 2020. How did you get involved in that? I know you mentioned you had family in the military. Were they Army men and women?
Yeah, well, three of them were. Three of my uncles were Army, and one, ironically, my Uncle Willie, who fought under Patton's army, who fought at the Battle of the Bulge. He and Charlie Durning would always swap stories because I'm sure they never met each other during that time, but they were both there at the same time. But Willie fought under General Patton and immediately fought under General Abrams, who they named the famous Abrams tank after.
Right.
Well, General Abrams' son, Creighton Abrams, was also an Army general, and he is the general that asked me if I would become the spokesperson for the United States Army, this museum that will ultimately be the largest military museum on the planet Earth. And I had my Uncle Willie with me in Washington the day that Creighton wanted to meet with me. And so to me, I'll never forget coming there with my uncle, who was probably close to 90 at that time. And here he was meeting the son of the general that he fought under in World War II. And to me, that was a beautiful moment. I mean, it was like just two old warriors kind of meeting, and one guy talking about his dad, and Willie talking about his experiences. And so it was Creighton Abrams who would ask me to do this, and I'll be seeing him in a few days in D.C. and we'll visit the site of the museum once again.
You and Gary will co-host again this year, Gary Sinise?
You know, as it turns out, Gary, due to personal reasons, had to bow out. And so Gary won't be doing it this year, but I'll be doing it with Mary McCormick, who was one of our guest actors a few years ago, whose father's a former Marine. And Mary really gets it, too, because I remember when Mary did her piece a couple years ago, when it was over, she said to all of us, she says, I'll come back and I'll do anything. I'll do the microphones, I'll do the sound, I'll throw out the garbage, I'll clean up after the concert. She was so taken by the event, and so that's how we all knew that she's a likely person to fill in if that opportunity arose.
Joe, for many, many years, every Memorial Day, my family and I would be there, out on the lawns watching you all. It's really a spiritual event as well. You're remembering these men and women, and you're communing with not only their memory, but their loved ones who are seated amongst you, and they're present. It really is hard to describe if you've never taken part in it, and I, like you, would encourage everybody to tune into PBS on Memorial Day. It's just an incredible event, and it's important to mark these men and women who gave their lives and to remember why and the freedom that they died protecting, and how cherished and valuable that is, and how high the stakes are today, continue, for our men and women in the battlefield.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, it's a cliched phrase almost, but it's free, but it's so true that freedom doesn't come free.
Right.
And some people pay a much higher price for it than others, and so we just have to always be aware of that and give credit where credit is due.
Yeah. Two quick things I want to touch. You're on the board of the Padre Pio Foundation.
Yeah.
And last time you were on the show, we talked about there was work on a film about his life. What is your connection to Padre Pio, and what drew you to his story?
Well, I mean, I was raised a Catholic, went to Catholic school that's a part of my educational background, and it's come from different directions. And I believe that sometimes things are serendipitous. I taught a class at Columbia College in Chicago for a couple of years, and one of my students there actually wrote a screenplay about Padre Pio, and he came to me as having been his former teacher and presented it to me, and I read it, and it was just something about the screenplay and the connection to Padre Pio being from a part of Italy where certainly my mother's side of the family is from, and I'm very close to that part of my family. So when I go to visit them, I'm literally a stone's throw away from the area that Padre Pio lived and worked in. So there's just aspects of that I'm not going to say I'm the best Catholic in the world, because I'm certainly not, but I like to believe that I have there's a certain thing about the spirituality of just life in general, and that we must find those avenues when and if we can. And that's one that I find just very fascinating and interesting, and hope to be able to explore.
Wow. Last week you finished your final episode as David Rossi on the television series Criminal Minds, a character that you played for 12 years. What is it like letting a character like that go after so long? And you have to be relieved to be free of some of those grisly storylines, Joe.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a mixed blessing in some ways. It certainly was bittersweet. It was a wonderful group of people I worked with. I'll miss them dearly. If you think about it, 12 years, it's like going through all of grammar school and 4 years of high school,
Right.
And it's a big chunk out of one's life. But I've been in this business, this is my 50th year as an actor professionally. So, I mean, I understand that it's transitory. You move from one thing to another. I feel blessed to have had the amount of time I did doing that role. There's a lot of Joe Mantegna in that character, though, and I was careful in a way to incorporate a lot of who I was into the character, and even in terms of ethnicity. I made him an Italian-American, so I'd have personal things to draw on. It's a little trick I'd learned early on from a producer friend who had said, if you're going to do a show that might have legs, and if you have control over who your character is, try to pick a lot of aspects of who you are, because then you can draw on those things over the years as you play the character.
Right.
So I think I was hopefully able to do that, and so I won't miss him quite as much because there's still hopefully a lot of David Rossi in me.
Absolutely. Joe Mantegna, thank you for being here. We will all be watching you this Memorial Day at the big concert, and I thank you for what you do and for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.